Elena Dawson had known for years that the land did not bend for anyone. It demanded endurance, grit, and a stubborn heart. That spring, the plains were merciless. The soil cracked underfoot, the grass brittle and whisper-thin like splintered bone, and the horizon stretched empty, promising nothing but sun and wind. Elena rode slowly across her own stretch of range on her chestnut mare, Ember, her eyes scanning the distance for signs of danger or hope. She had only wanted enough feed for her herd, enough water to keep them alive through the drought. Lately, even that seemed like an impossible hope. That was when she noticed a flicker near the riverbed, the dry and jagged channel carved by seasons of neglect. At first it looked like a trick of the sunlight on the rocks, then the figure wavered, uneven and desperate. Elena tightened her grip on the reins, nudging Ember forward. A young stallion stumbled over the stones. His black coat was matted with mud and blood, a deep gash along his flank leaking red onto the earth. He wavered but refused to collapse. Elena slid from the saddle, her rope coiled in one hand, the other hovering over the hatchet strapped to her side. She scanned the prairie for predators, wolves, coyotes, or worse, but the land remained still, indifferent. The only danger here was the stallion's weakening strength. Elena approached with cautious patience, her voice low and even. "Easy now, boy," she murmured. The stallion shuddered, eyes wide with pain and fear, yet made no move to strike. Elena knelt, pressing her scarf against the wound to slow the flow. The gash could have come from barbed wire or a mountain cat's claw. Either way, it would be fatal if ignored. "You've still got fight in you?" she whispered. She tipped a small flask of whiskey over the cut. The stallion flinched but did not bolt. Ember stamped behind Elena, letting out a soft warning whinny. Elena stroked the black mane, firm and steady. "Stick with me," she said. "We'll see another dawn together." She tore strips from her shirt, wrapping the wound as best she could, then fashioned a temporary halter from rope. Slowly, with patience and quiet coaxing, the stallion began to follow. By the time they reached Elena's homestead, the sun had sunk low and a chill crept over the land. The ranch was modest, fences leaning under their age, the barn sagging like tired shoulders. Elena led the stallion into an empty stall beside Ember. He trembled, yet accepted hay and water. By lamplight, Elena cleaned the wound again. Humming a soft tune her grandmother used to sing, the stallion's gaze softened and Elena felt an unexpected tug in her chest. This horse was not merely passing through. She noticed the dark glint beneath the dirt and said quietly, "Midnight fits." "You came for a reason," Elena added, patting his neck. Perhaps he would show her what it was. Days crept by. Midnight recovered slowly, muscle by muscle, sinew regaining the strength that had left him in the dust. Elena checked the fences, inspected her herd, and tended the water troughs, but every evening she returned to the stall. Ember was watchful at first, restless when Midnight neighed and pawed the ground. Yet gradually the two horses began to share the space, calm in each other's presence. The ranch felt lighter, almost alive after the silence of the drought. Then one morning Midnight whinnied sharply, his cry urgent, a command she could not ignore. Elena stepped onto the porch, heart thudding, eyes tracking his gaze toward the distant ridges. He pulled at the halter, muscles taut, his ears forward with determination, not fear. Elena frowned, gripping her rifle, the leather cool against her palm. "What's got into you, boy?" she muttered. She saddled Ember and let Midnight lead at a gentle pace, reins loose in her hands. The stallion moved with a purpose Elena had never seen before. They rode through gullies and brush, following paths she had never scouted, the terrain roughening with every step. Hills rose jagged like shattered teeth, cliffs cutting shadows across the ground. Finally, Midnight slowed, planting his hooves firmly. Half hidden behind a thicket of scrub, a cabin emerged, gray with age, its boards warped. The door hanging crooked on rusted hinges, the windows were shuttered, dust-heavy. Elena felt the chill creep along her spine. This place was not on any map she had ever seen. Then a thin column of smoke rose from the chimney. Someone lived here. "Someone's home," she whispered under her breath. Dismounting, rifle in hand, she approached cautiously, each step measured. The air smelled damp and earthy with a sharp undertone she could not name, fear or desperation, perhaps both. Through a crack in the door came a faint voice, weak, trembling. Elena pressed closer. Inside, tied to a chair, sat an old man, his skin weathered by sun and years, hair long and streaked with gray. Relief brightened his eyes when they met hers. "Thank the spirits," he rasped. "I thought they'd left me for dead." Elena knelt, swiftly cutting the ropes with her knife, her hand steady despite the tension. "Who did this?" she demanded. The man slumped, gripping her arm. "Men from the town," he said hoarsely. "They wanted the land." "I would not sell," she replied softly. His gaze burned into hers. "They'll return," he whispered. Elena helped him onto the narrow cot in the corner. The room smelled of old wood, sweat, and fear. She saw cruelty in his eyes, but something darker, more calculated than ordinary greed. The man, who called himself Kiona, an elder of the plains, told her fragments of history. He had lived on these lands long before fences and claim jumpers had divided it. Midnight stood at the doorway, ears forward, alert, a sentry watching silently. That night Elena remained beside him, rifle across her knees, eyes tracing every shadow on the walls. The prairie beyond was black beneath the stars, every sound amplified in the quiet. Kiona slept fitfully, murmuring in a tongue Elena did not understand. Midnight paced outside, restless, snorting softly. Elena whispered to the stallion, "What trouble have you dragged me into?" At dawn, Kiona spoke of hidden springs beneath the hills, water deep and plentiful, life-giving even. In drought, Elena's jaw tightened. Greed she knew too well. They would not leave this untouched. Kiona's eyes met hers. "The land chose you," he said. "So did I." Elena looked at midnight, unease pressing down her chest. Her quiet life, the one she had fought to maintain, was already gone. She did not sleep once the sun rose. By morning she helped Kiona. On to Ember, midnight following close, ears constantly swiveling, scanning the ridges. The ride back to the ranch was slow and careful, every sound making her hand drift toward her rifle. Upon arrival, Elena gave Kiona her own bed, taking the floor herself. He attempted to protest, but her gaze ended it. Over the next few days he recovered quickly, slower in speech than in body, observing everything with unflinching eyes. Midnight. Claimed the barn as his own, standing guard at night. Ember accepted him fully now, the two moving together like old companions. Kiona gradually revealed the truth in pieces. The men who had bound him carried papers claiming legal rights to the springs. They had beaten him, tied him up to instill fear, but the real prize was not land, it was water, the lifeblood of survival. Elena listened silently, jaw tight, remembering her own father's loss to greedy men, her own past battles. A week passed. Midnight grew restless, pacing the barn while Elena worked the fields, eyes constantly scanning the distant ridges. One morning, she noticed movement far away, 4 riders, silhouettes against the sun, cutting across the horizon. Like shadows made real, her stomach knotted. They were watching. By midday, the shapes had drawn closer. Elena stepped onto the porch, rifle steady in her hands. Kiona stood beside her, leaning on the carved cane he favored, silent but alert. The men rode slow, confident, their leader leaning forward in the saddle, grin wide as if the land were already his. "Fine country you've got," the leader called, voice carrying over the dry wind. "We're here for the old man." Elena's jaw tightened. "You're not taking him," she replied, voice calm but cold. The leader laughed, a sound meant to unnerve her. "You don't understand how this works, little lady." Elena fired a shot into the dirt by his horse's hooves. The animal reared violently, nearly throwing him, and he cursed, stepping back. "Next one won't miss," she said evenly. The other men exchanged wary glances, and the leader's grin hardened. "This isn't over," he called, spurring his horse slightly. The ranch felt smaller, tighter after that encounter. Elena spent the day reinforcing fences, checking locks, and preparing for the inevitability of their return. That night, she and Kiona set lanterns along the property line, the soft glow meant to suggest vigilance. Midnight moved like a shadow, snorting at every rustle of grass, every broken branch. Ember stamped, uneasy at the horses' growing tension. Days merged into one another, heavy with watchfulness. Elena tended her land with one eye always on the hills, one hand never far from her rifle. Kiona helped where he could, offering guidance on water sources, fence repairs, and safe passages through the rough terrain. At night, he shared stories of rivers that once ran through the prairie, teaching Elena to read the land as more than dirt and grass, but as history, memory, and survival. Then one morning, the barn door stood open, feed scattered across the dirt floor. Chickens had vanished. Fresh boot prints led south, careless and deliberate. Elena felt anger flare like wildfire, spreading from her chest to her fists. "They're testing us," she muttered. Kiona's hand rested lightly on her arm. "They want you angry. Anger makes mistakes. Calm makes strength." That evening, a shadow approached the fence. Elena fired a warning shot that splintered. A post. The figure ran, stumbling over rocks, disappearing into the night. She slept fitfully, rifle across her chest, muscles tight, dreams heavy with the sound of hooves and shouts. The next day, she rode back to the cabin with Kiona. Inside, she searched with precision. Beneath a loose floorboard, she discovered papers wrapped in oilcloth, deeds, maps, and proof of water rights. Her hands shook as she read the names. "This is why they tied you up," she whispered. Kiona nodded. "Truth scares greedy men." At the ranch, Elena hid the documents carefully, ensuring they would remain secret until the moment they were needed. Neighbors began trickling in, drawn by rumors, by the smoke stains left on the barn, and by whispered accounts of the riders. Some brought supplies, others brought rifles. By the time the men returned, Elena was no longer alone. Dawn broke pale over the prairie. The attackers arrived, mounted and shouting, their numbers greater than before. Shots rang through the fence. Lines, horses screamed. Elena fired from the porch, calm and precise. Kiona moved beside her, steady, his rifle unflinching. Neighbors took positions behind wagons, fences, and haystacks, returning fire with resolve born of survival. One rider fell under accurate aim. Another veered off, frightened. The leader rode forward, fury twisting his face. Elena's hand stayed steady, rifle aimed, finger firm on the trigger. A shot rang out, and the leader fell from his horse, clutching his arm, torch dropping into the dust. Silence settled over the ranch, thick and uneasy. The remaining riders scattered, some limping, some abandoning their mounts, retreating toward the hills. Elena breathed slowly, surveying the land. Her barn smoldered at one corner, fence posts splintered, but the core of the ranch remained intact. Morning came with a pale sun and sharp cold. Elena moved across the land, counting damage, reading tracks, feeling the weight of what was coming next. Kiona followed, leaning on his rifle like it was an extension of himself. "They will return," he said quietly, eyes shadowed by experience. Elena nodded. She already felt it. The day was spent in preparation, rifles cleaned, ammunition checked, water barrels filled. Neighbors stayed close, some camping near the barn, others patrolling the edges of the property. The ranch, for the first time in years, was alive, not with ghosts, but with people determined to protect their own. That night, Copper and Ember were restless. Midnight's cry carried over the plains before Elena even heard it. From the far edge of the land, flames flickered, torches moving like angry stars. Nearly a dozen riders charged, shouting and firing. Meant to scare, but also to harm? Elena stepped onto the porch, fear replaced by cold focus. "They're trying to burn us out," she said, voice low. Kiona lifted his rifle. "Then we stand," he replied. The first torch landed short of the barn, extinguished by dust. Elena fired, striking the man holding it. Chaos erupted, horses screaming, gunfire cracking through the night, sparks flying as bullets hit metal and stone. The flames crept along the far edge of the barn, sparks hissing as they met dry timber. Elena ran forward, firing twice, the sound sharp in the night air. Midnight burst from the corral, rearing and charging, hooves pounding as he scattered the attackers, stomping out the fire with furious precision. Ember followed, crashing into the fence and driving the remaining riders back, panic flaring in their eyes. Elena's heart raced, but her hands stayed steady on the rifle, finger ready. Around her, neighbors shouted, firing from behind wagons, fences, and scattered hay bales. The night was alive with chaos, the smell of smoke and gunpowder thick in her lungs. The leader, Calloway, rode forward, fury twisting his face, arm bandaged from before, eyes full of hate. "That land is mine," he roared, leveling his pistol at Elena. Time slowed. Every muscle in her body tensed. Elena's rifle rose, sights trained. She breathed evenly, unshaken. One shot, and Calloway screamed, clutching his arm as his horse bolted. The torch beside him went out. Silence slammed down across the prairie, thick and jagged, broken only by the labored breathing of horses and men. The remaining attackers fled into the hills, leaving their dead and wounded behind. Dawn arrived pale and slow, painting the ranch in muted gold. Elena stood trembling, rifle still warm in her hands, eyes scanning every corner of the land. Smoke clung to the barn, fence posts leaned or lay shattered, but the structures remained upright. Kiona placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's done for now," he said softly. Elena shook her head. She knew this was a pause, not an end. Men like Calloway did not quit. They returned harder, smarter, and more merciless. The morning was spent assessing damage. Elena walked the property, counting marks on fence posts, reading tracks in the dirt, memorizing the approach paths. Kiona followed, leaning on his rifle, eyes shadowed by years of survival. "They will come again," he said quietly. Elena nodded. She felt it deep in her bones. Rifles were cleaned and checked, ammunition recounted, barrels of water topped off. Neighbors stayed close, some patrolling the ridges, others camping near the barn. For the first time in years, the ranch felt alive, not just with her own work, but with people determined to defend it. Night returned, copper stamped nervously, alert to every sound. Midnight neighed sharply, ears swiveling, muscles coiled. From the horizon came the glow of torches again, nearly a dozen riders charging across the prairie. They shouted and fired wildly, attempting to intimidate. Elena stepped onto the porch, heart pounding, but fear burned away into cold focus. "They're trying to burn us out," she said. Kiona lifted his rifle beside her. "Then we stand," he replied. The first torch landed near the barn but was extinguished before it could ignite the wood. Elena fired, taking down the man holding it. Chaos erupted. Horses screamed and bolted, gunfire ripped across fences, sparks leapt where bullets struck stone and metal. Midnight tore through the group, hooves hammering, scattering men and stamping out fire. Ember charged alongside him, shoving riders into panic. Elena picked targets with measured shots, each pull of the trigger precise and calm, while Kiona moved methodically, steady and unshaken. Calloway's fury grew as he realized his men were retreating. He charged forward, arm raised, pistol leveled. Elena's focus sharpened, finger tightening. A single shot rang true, and Calloway fell from his horse, clutching his arm, the torch dropping into the dust and sputtering out. The remaining attackers fled, disappearing into the hills, leaving dead and wounded behind. By the first light of morning, the battle had ended. Elena stood among smoldering timbers and splintered fence posts, rifle still warm in her hands. She marked graves for the fallen, small stones lining the earth. Kiona stood beside her, leaning heavily on his rifle, silent. The neighbors emerged, weary but alive, surveying the damage. Elena walked the land, eyes sharp, hands brushing over tracks, fences, and scorched earth. The ranch was battered but unbroken. In the following days, work began in earnest. Fence posts were replaced, barns repaired, water barrels filled. Elena trained the neighbors to patrol and respond to signs of returning threats. Midnight and Ember moved together, ever watchful, sensing danger long before it arrived. The old man, Kiona, shared more stories of hidden springs, of lands worth protecting, of survival through harsh winters and dry summers. Elena listened, absorbing every detail, understanding that this land was alive and that its memory belonged to those who defended it. The battle had left marks, but it had also forged a new strength. Elena's ranch no longer felt empty or fragile. It was alive with people, horses, and the knowledge that they could stand together against greed, fire, and violence. Midnight neighed sharply, patrolling the edges of the property, while Ember nickered softly, her presence a quiet reassurance. Elena breathed deep, feeling the land beneath her feet, knowing that whatever returned, they would meet it head-on. The prairie stretched around them, wide and harsh but also promising. For the first time in years, Elena Dawson felt the weight of fear lift, replaced by vigilance, resolve, and the unshakable bond between herself, her horses, and the land they called home. Word spread fast. Neighbors arrived in numbers now, carrying tools, provisions, and strong hands to help rebuild. The ranch rang with noise, the clatter of hammers, laughter, and steady work. Days later, the sheriff came, taking the hidden deeds and maps from Elena's hands. He read them carefully, brow furrowed, then leaned back, face pale. "This will expose some very powerful men," he said quietly. "Good," Elena replied, voice calm. The truth moved faster than fear, faster than fire. Calloway's name fell. Like thunder, and others who had ridden with him vanished into hiding. The water rights were restored. Stolen lands were returned to those who had tended them for generations. Seasons shifted. Grass grew thick and green, the hidden springs running freely, life returning to the prairie. Elena rebuilt with care, stronger than before, fences straight, and barns repaired. Children learned to ride in her yard, laughter spilling across the fields. Neighbors gathered at her fire in the evenings, sharing stories, supplies, and trust. Keona remained, teaching and guiding, his strength returning. With each sunrise, wisdom flowing like water over the hills. Midnight recovered fully, roaming the land with quiet authority, while Ember aged gracefully, calm and watchful. Elena often stood on her porch in the evening, eyes scanning the horizon, knowing the west remained harsh, unpredictable, and dangerous. Yet this land remembered those who defended it, honored their persistence and courage. The ranch was no longer a fragile place of survival. It was alive, a home, a stronghold, a testament to resilience. The wind carried the scent of grass and rain, and Elena felt it deep in her chest. She was no longer just enduring the prairie. She was its guardian. And the prairie, in turn, would remember her.